process of getting percolated through and getting reviewed and getting approved by EPA. So they're both at different stages. I just kind of go over the sort of the human health one first. This is, you know, I had a question. Gerald Joyner, he's a program administrator over this whole process of getting these rules revised. And you know, one question I had is, well, how many people are asking what's the difference between this and drinking water standards? Basically, these human health criteria are within the water body itself, within the lake or the river or the estuary, and not at the treatment point or at the distribution point. So I'm just going to kind of go over the background of the revision of these criteria and some of the things that are going on, and then there's another one on bacteria, which y'all are probably familiar with. I think you probably heard a presentation on that last year. So what this is human health ambient water quality criteria that goes into our surface water standards, and we use these to assess our water bodies to see if they're the term is impaired, whether they're meeting standards or not, whether we need to do something about it. So it's for our own reasons as well as for permitted facilities if they have NPDES discharges. And I don't know if anybody, we all have NPDES discharges that you have to worry about. I'm not seeing any hands go over anything. So that's good. You can probably just. So anyway, the objective was to set criteria that it's not just drinking water, but it's also for fish consumption, that affect fish consumption and shellfish consumption too. So overall human health. It's been a long time since those criteria were looked at. The last time the last criteria were adopted were 1992. That's a long time ago. It's 2016 now. 2016 is when they were getting this stuff in place. So lots changed in the way that they do toxicology and they evaluate things. And so some of these numbers have changed, and they've added some new numbers. They use a kind of a probabilistic, they use probability-based criteria, and instead of, in some cases, it was just a number that was established without maybe that much thought into risk levels and things like that. They revised the human health criteria for 43 parameters. And here's the rub with some of the history is that some of them went up, some of them went down a little bit, some of them went up a little bit. And there was some concern from stakeholders on the ones that went up, and there were concerns on some of the other stakeholders, the ones that went down. And they added some new criteria, 39, and then there were some more stringent aquatic life which would affect your, consumption of things for some pesticides and something for phenol, or a new standard for it. They didn't update some things; they left them the same. So this is some pesticides and other things. You can read this as well as I can. Here are the equations.
That's going to be on your B and your A exam, just to let you know that. We're going to throw that at you.
I want you to read those because that's very important. No, there's two equations. One's based on the cancer type effect parameters, and then the ones that are non-cancer, that are more just toxic. This table here just kind of shows the comparisons, and what it's going to show is basically most of the things that we did were in line with EPA's guidelines. So we weren't going rogue and doing something totally weird. We were basically following the script with what EPA already provided. The older ones, it just shows the comparison. We'll probably get these slides later on. We'll probably post it, but I know you can't read all that. I'm not going to read it to you. But basically, we stuck with the script with EPA for the most part. All these criteria expressed as annual averages because it's based on ingestion or consumption. So it isn't like based on a one-time deal where you're going to drink the water at one time and it's eating a standard that's enough to cause it to be considered an exceedance. And this all means something to us when we're evaluating the health of water bodies. And there's a 250-page document, if you'd like to read about how this all came about, how these criteria were developed. So I'm going to leave this up here for a little while so you can write that web link down. Is that long enough? Okay. The legal status, I kind of referred to that a little while ago. There's a commission called the Environmental Regulation Commission. It's appointed by the governor, and they have to review and approve any rule changes that DEP does that involve standards. Now, there's some other big deal type rule changes that they also have to review and approve, but in this case, they had to review these back last summer in July. DEP went before the ERC, is what they're called, and pled the case, and they approved it. They approved these changes. There were several groups that did not like the changes from their different perspectives, and so they filed rule challenges. Those rule challenges were dealt with, dismissed. I'm not sure about some sort of technicality about that they had filed their challenges late. But then they get multiple chances to come back, and they appealed. Several did. And then this will all go to EPA for their approval, and so there'll be another chance at that too. So this is going to take a long time. DEP's already using these criteria for our own purposes, like I was talking about, for evaluating the impairment of water body. But it's going to be a while before EPA approves it, and as a result, it's going to be a while before it gets worked into NPDES permits. And it could be a year or two. Who knows? Politics cause things to change. But anyway, if you do have an NPDES permit, it wouldn't automatically be, these criteria would automatically be in place. They would wait for the permit to basically cycle until its next permit came, and then they would add things that would be reasonable from this list of new criteria. So here's the other thing: is bacteria criteria, and y'all might be a little more familiar with this. It has to do with the fact that we've been using fecal coliform as a measurement or a surrogate for contamination by bacteria in surface waters for a long time. And it hasn't always been the best measurement of problems. And over the years, EPA have come to determine that there are other measurements that are better. For fresh waters, E. coli is a better indicator of problems with bacteria in fresh waters, and enterococci is better for marine water. Salt water kills E. coli, so that wouldn't do them any good. Based on we're basically setting these new standards based on EPA recommended values. And it has to do with also Department of Health. They do monitoring at bathing beaches throughout the state, and they use these two analytes as their indicators of whether the beaches should be closed or advisories should be posted for beaches. But we're keeping fecal coliforms in place for Class 2, which are the marine waters that are used for shellfish, like Appalachian Cold Bay. So here's how these are applied, and it's a little complicated because they're using something called a monthly geometric mean of the upper value not to be exceeded 10% or more of the sample during a 30-day period. So there's two things going on: your monthly mean, or if that value is just exceeded within a 30-day period. And these are just the values. The monthly geometric mean for E. coli being 126. Those are colonies per 100 milliliters of water or sample. And the 10% threshold value would be 410, a higher number. And then 35 for ferric oxide, 130 for the monthly mean, 35 the monthly mean, and 10% threshold would be 130. This is where we'll probably kind of start glazing over because some of these slides are going to seem redundant because we're looking at different water body classes. Now this is still not in place with EPA, but we're using it for our own purposes once again for our listing of impaired surface waters. EPA is still reviewing our proposed new criteria. They were proposed back in December of 2015. That's how long it takes EPA to get rid of this stuff. So once it is approved by EPA, kind of the same deal with the other, is these would go into permits in domestic wastewater facilities that discharge surface water. I don't know if you have any that discharge that you'd be concerned about, but your parameters would eventually change from fecal coliform to these, depending on the water body type that you're discharging to, and the targets would vary based on the type of water body you're discharging to. There's also a need to continue monitoring for fecal coliform because of disinfection requirement for wastewater. So if you're doing it, you might want to start adding these in just to see how they compare. Because at some point, we'll probably let these kind of supersede fecal coliform in some cases.
Rick,
Yes.
and maybe for the district, is there a lot of labs in the area that do those types of testing? Because I know many of them do fecals, but there's only a limited number that do E. coli or
That's a
pterococcus.
good point.
Do you know, Kim, if there's labs?
Where are we at? There are future labs.
Yeah, we do have some.
Okay.
Accurate.
Because I know that was some of the issues in some parts of the state, is finding a lab that would.
Yeah, and holding time issues are really a problem if you got to ship it across the state
Right.
for these things. I'm not going to read these, but the different classes of freshwaters, like the class 3 freshwater, that's the kind, that's the fishables. That's just like a lake or a river that isn't used for drinking water, fresh water. It's more stringent. Same thing for marine. I mean, for the freshwater, you'd be using E. coli. For the marine, you'd be using the ferric oxide standard. For class 2 waters, I mentioned shellfish harvesting before. It's a different number. So it's a little complicated, but if your facility discharges the same kind of water body all the time, then you don't have to know all this. Same thing, I'm going to read all this stuff. Drinking water supplies, obviously the most stringent is class 1 waters. These are for surface waters that we use for drinking water. So those obviously have the highest level of treatment requirement, the highest standard. Same thing. So anyway, that's Daryl Joyner. That's the guy that if you have questions about this kind of stuff to go to. The document, I'll show you that link. This is the Water Quality Standards Sections website. They've got a lot of information about both of these things that I just talked about because they've been fighting those battles for quite a while, and they do a real good job of documenting the presentations they've done and the technical support documents that show how they got where they got with these things. So that's it. That's me.
Any questions for Rick?